2010 Constitution does not require a national dialogue to disband IEBC.
These are the issues for which we want dialogue. Security, corruption.
Thanks but no thanks. Why Jubilee wants nothing of the national dialogue.
Can the president tell us that if this facility fails, if there are question marks with this particular engagement, that we should hold him accountable?
This arrangement between the government of the Republic of Kenya is an attempt at circumventing competitive bidding.
And not so fast. Fresh questions over the Safaricom security tender.
Close shave. Kericho governor supporters celebrate after impeachment flops.
This is KTN Prime with Nancy Kachungira and Wilson Buru.
It is the third day of June 2014. A very good evening. Thank you very much for joining us on KTN Prime. And we do have a special guest tonight.
Yes, indeed we do. In his first television interview since he got back, we've got Raila Odinga in the studio with Joe Ageo. Joe, there's obviously lots of questions on the table, but what will you be focusing on this evening?
Yes, as you say, Nancy, quite a lot of things, and yes, the guest is already somewhere in the vicinity, and yes, there are a lot of things to talk about, but I think chiefly we'll be talking about what we choose here to call the dialogue discord, because there has been a suggestion from CORD about this national dialogue, and from Jubilee it is thanks but no thanks, and we will have to find out what that really means. Obviously, Raila Odinga is also the leader of ODM, and so we'll be speaking a little bit about that as well, but quite an interesting evening. I think we're going to have a great conversation, and so we're looking forward to that, Nancy and Wilson.
Yes, we're certainly looking forward to that as well. Thank you, Joe. We'll get back to you later. As he said, dialogue discord, that's the hashtag that you can use to get involved in that conversation.
Now, but let's start looking at the stories that we have for you tonight. And will there be national dialogue on the 7th of July?
Well, as Joe said, the Jubilee Coalition says forget it. A 3-hour meeting at the State House in Nairobi ended in the ruling coalition shooting down prospects of a national dialogue day demanded by the opposition.
KTN's Asha Mula begins our bulletin with the details.
At Orange House, the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy sat down to lay their ground rules on the national dialogue slated for Saba Saba Day.
So these are the issues for which we want a dialogue. Security, corruption, national unity and constitutional inclusivity in public appointments and government. 4, the IEBC, the electoral process and credibility of elections. 5, the restructuring of the provincial administration and devolution.
We are ready. If they are ready.
But at the House on the Hill, the President's coalition stood firm to say they are not ready.
Yes, the President during Madaraka Day talked about the need to continue engaging. However, the position of Jubilee is that engagement that is welcome is engagement on social issues.
It's not the first time the dissolution of a membership of an electoral body is taking center stage in Kenya's politics.
Listen.
After the chaotic 2007 elections, the Electoral Commission of Kenya was hounded of office and replaced with the Interim Independent Electoral Commission, IIEC. The IIEC itself would later give way to the current IEBC, shedding off some of the interim members for the new team. Now, CORD wants that team out.
We don't want to have anything to do with the government. But we cannot say that, look, you are elected as a government, govern for 5 years, do whatever you like with our people.
The roadmap to disband IEBC is well documented in the Constitution.
there is misrepresentation of facts.
And as the afternoon set in, the back and forth was dragged onto the floor of the August House as MPs sat for their first sitting this month.
You were rigged against that young man. But tomorrow, when you will be rigged out, Mr. Honorable Duale, you will see the sense in what we are saying.
That the so-called National Dialogue Initiative, in my opinion, is about the president having a cup of tea with some other people, not on IBC.
With a petition to disband the current electoral agency now formally in Parliament, the Chepkonga-led Legal Affairs Committee will now probe the question and report back to the House. Asha Mwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
Well, that forms the basis of our big question tonight, and we are asking, should Jubilee members accept calls for dialogue over the removal of the IEBC commissioners? Should Jubilee members accept calls for dialogue over the removal of IEBC commissioners?
That's right. For now, they've said thanks, but no thanks, and that they're ready to engage on social issues, but maybe not this one. Let us know whether you think they should change their minds about that. And you can do that by tweeting us. My handle is @Kachungira. Tweet Wilson as well, @Wilson_Mburu, add @KTN Kenya to that. If you'd rather send an SMS, you can do that. 22155 is the number, and do begin with a yes or a no, and then your comment, and we'll be looking at what you have to say later on in the bulletin.
Absolutely. Let's move on. And the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy CORD is now demanding the refund of monies paid to the Anglo Leasing farms. The coalition is also calling for the prosecution of civil servants who were involved in the multi-billion shilling scam. CORD made the demands as the Jubilee Coalition resolved to reach out to the Igembe South Member of Parliament Mithika Linturi to drop out his impeachment motion against Devolution Cabinet Secretary Anne Waiguru.
Ahead of the reopening of the National Assembly after a month's recess, Jubilee senators and MPs gathered at State House for a parliamentary group meeting.
Sun is sharp.
Not too far off from State House, CORD leaders too gathered their troops at Orange House, just days after CORD leader Raila Odinga returned to the country from the United States. The coalition is faulting the government over the payment of Anglo Leasing contracts and wants Anglo Leasing firms to give the money back.
The payment of 4.1 billion shillings to an Anglo Leasing type company is a slap in the face of Kenyan people. We are calling for the refund of this money.
CORD is accusing the government of shutting out the country's traditional Western allies in favor of the East and wants the government to change tact in international relations.
And we don't acquire new friends by abandoning old friends.
Chinese are not here to help you. Chinese are here to do business.
The CORD coalition says it will hold rallies throughout the country, with the next one planned for the 15th of this month at the Tononoka grounds in Mombasa. As CORD strategized on its rallies, the Jubilee Parliamentary Group rallied behind Devolution Cabinet Secretary Anne Waiguru, who is facing impeachment despite demands by some MPs that the impeachment motion should be allowed to take its course.
The Jubilee Coalition as a family have urged our colleague, our member, the Honorable Linturi, to drop that motion. We have urged him to do that.
The meeting is said to have been a stormy one. Sources say MPs accuse the executive of letting down the spirit of the Jubilee coalition, with the president and his deputy urging the leaders to keep from what they termed as small rebellions. Jubilee says good progress has been made in the journey towards devolution.
That we remain committed to using the established structures to make sure that Kenya is better.
Jubilee has formed a secretariat that has been tasked with coordinating all the coalition's activities. The Jubilee coalition is set to go on a retreat to relook at the government's performance and strategize for the country moving forward. The date and venue of the retreat are yet to be agreed upon. Rita Tinina, KTN.
So CORD has not pulled any punches when it comes to passing judgment on the Jubilee coalition. And tonight we hear from CORD leader himself, Raila Odinga. We go over now to Joe Ageo. And don't forget the hashtag is Dialogue Discord. Over to you, Joe.
All right, thank you very much, Nancy. Yes, indeed, as you mentioned, quite some interesting developments since the court leader arrived back in the country 2 days ago. And tonight, we are live with him here at KTN, and we would like to pose some of the questions that many of you out there have been asking on this particular question of the national dialogue. And Mr. Odinga, welcome to our studio tonight. Very interesting developments. You came and talked about this national dialogue, and we'll talk a little bit about what that really means. But Jubilee is saying thanks, no thanks. Where do we go from here?
Well, it really is up to Jubilee. As you know, we suggested that there is need for people to dialogue, because I don't think that anyone can deny that there's a crisis in the country. And pleasantly, the following day, the president said, yes, they're ready to dialogue. Now today I see a reversal. So actually they're giving an impression of a very confused outfit.
But
the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing.
But isn't it also because there have been very confusing signals from your end? On that day when you were at Uhuru Park, I think the former vice president said something to the effect of being included in government. In some way says there's no way you can have 60% of the country outside government. And that was interpreted by some people to mean that you're looking for what has been called by some people nusum kate in this government.
Not at all. What the VP actually meant was he talked about an all-inclusive government. It's actually referring to politics of exclusion, where people are being appointed on the basis of where they come from, and that a very large percentage of the population of this country is being left out, particularly in public appointments, whereas the government is collecting taxes from all those people, all those communities. But when it comes to appointments, those people are being excluded. That is all that the VP had in mind. At no point, both in word and in print, did we ever imply that we would like to have any part in this government.
But isn't it Jubilee's turn to run government? Why don't you just let them do it?
Precisely, that's what you're saying. Let them run the government. That's why they are there. But we're saying that there are certain issues over which you cannot just say we wait until after the elections. For example, when it comes to the issues of security, this actually involves our people, our supporters. We cannot say let's wait until 5 years, how people can just be killed because it is Jubilee. Let them do it the way they want. When it comes to the issues of corruption, when public funds are being used to pay non-existent debts, that money is coming from the coffers of our people. And we have a responsibility to protect it. But when it comes to the issue of devolution, for example, you know that more than 50% of the county governments are under CORD management. And we want to see that the devolution is running perfectly.
But there have been some pretty scary terminologies used at these rallies. There's one called revolution. The former VP also said that if Jubilee does not come for this dialogue on Saba Saba, waende nyumbani. Those are pretty scary things for people who are in government. You can't blame them if they say we're not interested.
Those are political statements, and even the people in Jubilee quite understand the implications. All that we are saying is that there's a crisis, and actually, when there's a crisis, that is when you actually see the quality of leadership, because those who care for the society will come out and dialogue. In this kind of situation,
so
because we see, that other day,
so we
resisted the temptation. Like the people were putting a lot of pressure on me. Let's say today ABCD, but I said no. We need to dialogue. You see, we reach a stage where Bonanchi can just get out of control. And that's what you really don't want.
So you get to Saba Saba, and then there is no dialogue. They haven't formed a team as you have asked for. What next?
Well, we're saying that they have an obligation. That's why they've been given up to Saba Saba to have some structured dialogue going on. If they don't, then of course you meet at Sabasaba, you will ask wananchi what they want. Well, before we reach Sabasaba, by the way, you'll say that we are going to do consultations. So like on the 15th of this month, we are going to go to Mombasa, to Tononoka. Now we have changed the format of these meetings. So there are going to be less talking by politicians. We are going to be listening to wananchi. And what are the problems and what do they propose as solutions?
Best case scenario, Jubilee says, fine, let's talk. What do you see as called as the outcome of all of these things?
The outcome, of course, is to come up with a structured, systematic approach to those issues. Like when you talk about security, insecurity is not just Al-Shabaab. It's much more widespread. There are several causes to it. So let us discuss the issue of national security comprehensively, and then come out with a way forward. This is how this issue should be tackled. We have a role as a people, and they have a role. You saw, for example, in the Westgate crisis, we came out and said over this issue, there's no opposition, there's no government. We're all Kenyans. Okay? And we could even give some advice, like in our view, we thought that it was unwise to get the military involved in an operation which was purely civilian. That operation was bungled, that probably lives could have been saved if we did not have that conflict and confusion that existed on that day.
But now
the other one is the issue of corruption. Because they are saying that, look, if you don't pay these debts, our assets are going to be attached by these creditors, or we cannot be able to float
yes, I mean, Anglo Leasing, we will discuss that in a moment because I think it is an important thing. But concluding on this national dialogue, there are people who have accused your party of creating unnecessary tension in the country by having all these political rallies and having big meetings, almost putting the country on election mode.
Joe, you cannot really try to blame me. While I was in the US, I got a very lengthy letter written by Kenyans telling me that, Baba, while you were away, ABCD happened, X, Y, Z, and so on. It was a lengthy letter.
How did that make you feel?
It actually went viral.
How did that make you feel? Being called Baba while you're away, come help us.
Some of it were, of course, sarcastic, but some of them were very serious issues over which you cannot gloss over. So I felt that there was need to address these issues. But that is the reason why I proposed a dialogue.
Are you not concerned that it looks to me that the country is quite polarized, that even if you look at the comments on social media and other platforms, that actually this could be making things worse?
It's not you do not solve a problem by running away from it. You solve a problem by confronting it. This problem is not going to go away. You cannot wish it away. You have to address it. Otherwise, it will be here, it will be there again tomorrow. It will magnify. And that's the reason why we're saying that let us sit down and confront this problem. See? And we will give you our views gratis, pro bono. Pro bono advice to the Jubilee government. Because the people over whom they are ruling are also our supporters. If more than 50% of the population of this country are supporters of CORD.
Let's talk a little bit about corruption, and you talked about Anglo Leasing in particular. And a few weeks ago, while you were in the US, you were quoted as having said that some of those contracts were actually not fraudulent. Some of them were delivered on. And here you are now saying in that press conference that we watched a few minutes ago that the government should actually have that money refunded.
Questions are tonight being raised on the legitimacy of the 15 billion shilling tender that was awarded to Safaricom for for surveillance and communication equipment. A section of Parliament's Energy and ICT committee members say that the details of the tender should be availed to the public so that they know what Safaricom stands to gain from the tender and why it was single-sourced to provide the security system. Here's Linda Ogutu with that story.
That is why my government has decided to install state-of-the-art high-tech security measures across the country.
15 billion shillings, the deal that was awarded to Safaricom for surveillance and communication equipment, the latest attempt by the government to keep its citizens safe in the wake of persistent terror attacks in major towns. Few weeks down the line, and Parliament's Energy and ICT Committee is raising questions on the tender, 26 questions to be precise. Gwasi Member of Parliament John Mbadi, Rarieda Member of Parliament Nicholas Gumbo and Vincent Musyoka of Mwala said the proposed system was being single-sourced through direct procurement from Safaricom, contrary to the Public Procurement and Disposal Act 2005 on direct procurement. Safaricom, they say, may not be able to meet its end of the bargain.
Clearly, this arrangement between the government of the Republic of Kenya is an attempt at circumventing competitive bidding.
The allegations come just days after KTN exclusively spoke to Safaricom CEO Bob Collymore on the integrity of the deal.
I'm sure there are people who are finding lawyers with briefcases who are heading off to the court to challenge this. We know that that will happen. We'll have to manage our way through it, but we are committed to work with the government to get this thing delivered.
The MPs are also raising concern over what they say amounts to the government outsourcing the security of Kenyans.
What is Safaricom going to gain out of this project?
But Collymore says Safaricom has nothing to gain from the deal.
If you think about what the state of the nation will be if we continue in this heightened state of security, if that continues, we don't have an environment which is conducive for managing a successful business.
The project is intended to deliver some 1,800 surveillance cameras in Nairobi and Mombasa, in addition to other modern security equipment. But the members of parliament are questioning the telecommunication giant's ability to meet its end of the bargain.
Where is the record to support Safaricom's abilities to support this far more sophisticated and much more strategic network when it seems to be struggling to meet the conditions of its current license?
Apart from the cost and the integrity of the process, the MPs would like to know who will be the real owners of the proposed system, Safaricom or the government of Kenya. To what extent are Kenyan security agencies involved in the conceptualization of the system? Who will hold the copyright of the project, Safaricom or an independent team of professionals? How is the security of the system itself guaranteed against intrusion by third parties? The system is intended to link all security agencies, making it easier to share information and direct police operations. As part of the deal, Safaricom is required to develop a system for surveillance analysis, command and control for police to boost the capacity of security agencies in the fight against terrorism. Linda Ogutu, KTN Prime.
My name is Boni Tunya. This is Business. Even with the Constitution of Kenya bestowing greater role in the public, to the public in the management of county management affairs, only 100 of Nairobi County residents turned up for the 2014-2015 budget hearings held at the City Hall. Charles Kitonga was part of the attendance and filed this report.
Assembly, which is going
a near-empty hall marked the Nairobi County 2014-2015 fiscal year budget hearing. With the county boasting of close to 4 million residents, only 100 showed up for this defining moment. But not just city residents gave the proceedings a wide berth. Elected officials too were accountable.
Nimefurahi na budget. Budget ni mzuri kwa sababu nimeangalia area kama ile pesa imepeanwa kwa wards.
Sana sana kwa mambo ya sports tunaweza omba ya kwamba watuongezee pesa ili mayouth wetu waweze kupata enough facilities.
The residents, mostly comprising of traders and youth, engaged the budget committee on unbalanced development in the county, little allocation for agriculture and education, among other issues. They also could not point out notable changes emanating from the previous public hearing held in April.
Kwa maoni yangu naona ni kama itaweza shughulikiwa, tuko na imani.
With the finance bill which outlines taxation measures for the county dominating the conversation, the county budget committee promised a review at the beginning of the next financial year. Through the bill, the county government hopes to raise about 17 billion shillings to bridge the budget deficit.
We are going to relook at it in details in their presence, because all stakeholders this time around will be invited in writing. Because we realize that there are some revenues that we were not capturing. These are revenues to do with the devolved functions, which we couldn't capture at doing the first budget.
In the financial year, the county government will be seeking to raise over 28 billion shillings to meet its recurrent and development expenditure. Out of this, 13.7 billion will go into payment of salaries, with only 9 billion dedicated to development activities. Charles Gitonga, KTN Business.
With only days left before the 2014-2015 budget statement that is read by the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich, Michael Karanja looks back at some of the highlights of the 2013-2014 fiscal year budget and kicks off KTN's pre-budget analysis.
We're well and truly into the month of June, and that means that the budget is around the corner. But just before we get to the 2014-2015 budget, it's always nice to take a step back and look at what happened in the previous financial year. Now, looking back to the 2013-2014 financial year, 1.64 trillion shillings had been set aside by the National Treasury to be used during that financial year. Now, the reason this time around it shot up that high from about 1.2 trillion shillings to 1.64 was the inclusion of the devolved system of government, where 210 billion shillings had actually been set aside for the county governments. Looking back to 2013-2014, recurrent expenditure, as always, took the lion's share of what was set aside at 955.5 billion shillings, while development expenditure was actually left at 447.9 billion shillings. Now, this has been a major area of concern for the current government led by President Uhuru Kenyatta, and they're actually trying to devise ways of dealing with this. And one area that they actually identified was the current wage bill. Now, at 500 billion shillings, the president was categorical that this was not sustainable, and they're actually looking for ways where this recurrent expenditure can come down so that we can have more money put into the development expenditure. One of the contentious issues in the 2013-2014 budget was the introduction of the VAT Act, but that is well and truly underway and has already been clarified on which goods are exempt and which goods were actually covered by that VAT Act. Another highlight of the 2013-2014 budget was the introduction of a 1.5% rural development levy. Now, this was meant to be a way for the government to collect money in which it could support the construction of the standard gauge railway. One shining light, however, was the government's decision to introduce leasing into the way it finances itself. But looking forward to that 2014-2015 budget, it's at 1.8 trillion shillings. All that remains just to hear what Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich has to say on what that budget is going to be used for, and whether it's going to be used more for development, or actually we're going to go back into our failings of increasing our recurrent expenditure. Michael Karanja, KTN Business.
That's right, and that report by Michael Karanja kicks off a series of KTN pre-budget analysis that will be running all week long until the budget day. But what else is happening in the world of business? Nokia, or rather Microsoft Technologies, has launched Nokia Rex, as well as the Competition Authority slapping a 5.3 ban on penalty on Tuskys and Ukwala. Take a look.
Continue to take the leadership.
Microsoft Mobile Devices East Africa has launched the Nokia X into the Kenyan market in a bid to expand their share into the smartphone market. The Android-powered device features a tile-based home screen similar to the Lumia lineup, with a 5-inch capacity touchscreen, a 1 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon dual-core processor, a 5MP autofocus camera with a flash 2MP front-facing camera, and it is a dual-SIM phone. Elsewhere, shareholders of Jamii Bora Bank have approved an additional 1 billion shilling capital call to allow the bank meet the Central Bank of Kenya's statutory ratios in capital adequacy and liquidity through a rights issue, a private placement, or a conversion of the bank's corporate bonds into equity. In the 2013 financial year, Jamii Bora registered a 93 million shilling in profit before tax. And finally, the Competition Authority of Kenya has imposed a 5.3 million shilling penalty to Tusker Mattresses Limited and Ukwala Supermarkets Limited for engaging in a horizontal restrictive trade practice. The two supermarkets, who are competitors, were found to have an arrangement that involved price fixing and behaviors that either controls production, limits market outlets or access, which are a contravention to the Section 21 of the Competition Act. Right, and that's how we wrap up business. Let's take a look at the numbers now in the market. Money Market Report coming up next. My name is Bulletin. Good night.
The Financial Report in association with KCB M-Benki.
Jibenki. Jifungulie KCB M-Benki account katika simu yako leo kwa kupiga *522#.
One here from Esther Moas, who says, do they want the UN to oversee the elections? How can they want to lead those that they have no faith in?
Tom Boy here says Kenya is more than God versus Jubilee. Any discussion on the future of IBC and or elections must include all stakeholders.
Well, thank you very much for your opinions and for joining us for KTN Prime tonight. Our sign language interpreter was William Silla. I'm Nancy Kachingira. Have yourself a blessed night.
I'm Wilson Buru. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Good night.